The house only exists for one night. It appears where nothing has ever stood. It waits. And every 9 years, someone is meant to return. I know that because I was there when it appeared. I heard children crying in its walls, and an old woman told me something I've never been able to forget. She said that every 9 years, someone must return. I was 23 when it happened. I am 50 now, and in a few months, it will be 9 years again. My name is Andrew Collins, and I've lived most of my life in West Glacier, Montana. If you've never been to the Apgar Mountains in early spring, it's difficult to explain the atmosphere. The snow melts in uneven patches, revealing dark soil beneath. Fog settles low between the trees in the mornings, and by afternoon the forest smells like wet bark and thawing earth. It's beautiful, but it's not gentle. The forest there has a presence. It feels older than memory. When the wind moves through it, the sound isn't just noise, it feels deliberate. My father used to say, "The woods don't care if you know them. They decide whether they know you." At 23, I thought I understood what that meant. I didn't. We owned roughly 80 acres along a lower ridge in the Apgar Range. Not a massive operation, but enough that logging it required careful planning. We had walked that land together since I was a kid. I knew where the ground dipped unexpectedly. I knew which clusters of trees grew closer together. I knew which clearing caught the most sun and which sections stayed shadowed all day. There was one main clearing about halfway up the ridge. Flat, open enough for vehicles, surrounded by tall pine that acted like a wall. That clearing was important. It was where I left my truck the day the house appeared. It was late April, the kind of day that feels undecided, not quite winter, not quite spring. Cloud cover hung low, but steady. No thunder, no warning signs of anything unusual. My father and I had marked several mature trees earlier that week. They were ready to be cut and staged. The plan was simple. I'd drive up alone in the afternoon, cut and stack the logs, leave them ready near the clearing, return the next morning with them, and haul everything out. I had done this dozens of times before. There was nothing unusual about that day, at least not at first. I parked in the clearing around noon. The air was cool but manageable. A faint breeze moved through the trees, carrying that damp earth smell that only shows up during snow melt. I carried my equipment about 15 minutes deeper into the forest and started cutting. There's something hypnotic about splitting wood. The rhythm of the swing, the crack of separation, the echo through the trees. Time slips away when you work like that. And that's probably why I didn't notice how quickly the light began to change. The first strong gust of wind caught me off balance mid-swing. I paused, looked up. The canopy above was shifting faster than it should have been. Then came another gust, stronger. Within minutes, the forest had transformed. Branches whipped violently. The air pressure felt heavier. The sky darkened with unnatural speed. There had been no forecast of severe weather. But in Montana, that doesn't always matter. Still, this felt different. The wind wasn't building, it was surging, as if it had been waiting. I decided to head back immediately. I secured what I could and began walking back toward the clearing. The path was familiar. I could have walked it blindfolded. At least, I thought I could. But within a few minutes, something felt wrong. The slope seemed steeper. The spacing between trees felt tighter. A large fallen log I used as a visual marker wasn't there. In its place stood 3 young pines. I stopped walking I scanned the area. Storm distortion, I told myself. Wind can make everything look unfamiliar. I adjusted slightly to the left and continued downhill. But the deeper I went, the more the forest felt rearranged. Then I noticed something else. The wildlife had stopped. No birds, no distant movement, no rustling underbrush, just wind. And my breathing? That silence unsettled me more than the storm. Because even during bad weather, something usually moves out there. But not that afternoon. It felt like the forest had paused. The rain began suddenly, cold and sharp. Within seconds, the ground turned slick. My boots slid slightly on the muddy slope. I quickened my pace. The light dimmed toward evening faster than it should have. And that's when I saw it. Smoke, thin, gray, rising between the trees ahead. Relief hit me instantly. The clearing, my truck. Someone must have driven up to check on me. That was my first rational explanation. But as I stepped into the open space, my truck wasn't there. In the exact center of the clearing stood a cabin, old timber construction, stone chimney. Smoke rising steadily. Its structure looked weathered but intact. Not abandoned, not ruined, just present. I froze. We had owned that land my entire life. There had never been a structure there. Not when I was a child, not during any survey, not even ruins. Yet this cabin stood solid and ordinary, as though it had always belonged. The storm raged behind me, wind at my back, rain against my jacket, and a warm glow flickering faintly through the cabin window. I made a decision. Shelter first, questions later. I stood in the rain for several long seconds before approaching. The cabin looked real, not faded, not transparent. The timber was thick, darkened by age. The stone chimney was properly stacked. The smoke rising from it moved naturally with the wind. Nothing about it looked like an illusion, and yet it didn't belong there. The clearing had always been open, flat, empty. I had parked my truck in that exact center spot dozens of times. Now the truck was gone, replaced. I remember thinking something very simple. If this is real, someone built it. If someone built it, they had to use the road. If they used the road, I would have seen it before. The thoughts didn't line up. Another strong gust of wind hit my back, pushing me forward. I stepped toward the cabin. The porch was small, 2 steps up, no railing. The wood beneath my boots was dry. That's the detail that bothered me later. The storm had been intense. Rain had soaked everything. But the porch boards felt completely dry. I reached for the door, knocked twice. The sound felt muted, absorbed. No movement inside. I waited. Nothing. I tried the handle. It turned easily. Unlocked. Warm air brushed against my face as I opened the door. Not heavy heat. Just enough to feel deliberate. Like the cabin had been prepared. The door closed behind me with a soft, controlled sound. Not a slam, not wind-driven. Controlled. The interior was larger than I expected. Single-room structure. Stone hearth at the center. A low-burning fire giving off steady orange light. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke. And something else. Old paper. Dust. Time. There was only one chair positioned near the hearth. One narrow wooden table near the far wall. No bed. No visible storage. No tools. No kitchen. No windows beyond the one small pane near the door. It felt less like a home and more like a waiting room. I called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded smaller than it should have. No echo, no response. That's when I realized something. I couldn't hear the storm anymore. Not faintly, not distantly. Completely gone. No wind, no rain, no branches. Just the soft crackle of the fire. I stood still, listening. Silence. The kind of silence that feels padded, artificial, as if the outside world had been muted. A subtle pressure began to build in my ears, not painful, just noticeable. I took a step toward the hearth. The fire dimmed slightly. Another step. It dimmed again. Then, it went out completely. No smoke, no hiss, just darkness. For half a second, the room was pitch black. Then, one by one, candles ignited. A single flame near the table, another near the back wall, then two more near the corners. Within moments, dozens of small candles burned throughout the room. They hadn't been visible before. Now they were everywhere. Lining shelves I hadn't noticed, resting on the floor, balanced along beams. Their light flickered softly, casting long shadows that moved unnaturally across the walls. And that's when I heard breathing. Behind me, slow, measured, too close. I turned carefully. An elderly woman stood near the back wall, partially illuminated by candlelight. She hadn't been there before. I was certain of that. Her posture was straight despite her age. Her gray hair was pulled tightly back into a knot. Her skin was pale but not sickly. Her expression neutral, not angry, not welcoming, just attentive. As if I had arrived precisely when scheduled. I didn't hear her walk. I didn't hear a door. She was simply there, watching. The air felt thicker suddenly, like humidity before lightning strikes. The wooden floor beneath me creaked once, then again. Slow, rhythmic, not from my movement, from the cabin itself. The beams above shifted slightly. A low groan ran through the walls. The sound wasn't violent. It was controlled, measured, like breathing. The woman did not move. Her eyes never left mine. I swallowed. "Is this your cabin?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she tilted her head slightly to one side, studying me, evaluating. Then, in a calm, almost gentle voice, she asked, "You came alone?" Her tone wasn't accusatory. It wasn't welcoming either. It was confirming. I hesitated. "Yes." A faint smile touched her lips. Not warm, not cold, just knowing. "Good," she said quietly. The floor creaked again, louder this time. At first, I thought it was the wind returning, a faint sound somewhere near the back of the room. But it wasn't wind. It was softer, higher, children, crying, distant, muffled, as if coming from another room. Except there were no other rooms. The cabin was one open space. I scanned the walls. No doors, no hallways. The crying continued. Not loud, not chaotic, just steady. Sorrowful. Layered. More than one voice. The woman's expression did not change. "You hear them?" she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Behind her, partially obscured by shadow, hung a mirror. I hadn't noticed it before. Simple wooden frame, glass slightly warped, as if aged. Took a step sideways to see past her shoulder. And that's when my stomach dropped. In the reflection, I was not alone. A child stood where I stood. Small, 5 years old maybe. Wearing clothes I vaguely recognized from old photographs. The child's face was wet with tears. His hands pressed flat against the glass. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. The crying in the cabin grew slightly louder. The woman watched me. The walls leaned inward subtly, not collapsing, just closing. The ceiling beams creaked in response. The candle flame stretched sideways, though there was no wind. The pressure in my ears increased. The crying shifted position. Now it sounded closer, as if just behind the walls, or inside them. I stepped backward toward the door. The woman did not stop me. She didn't move at all, but her eyes followed every motion. I reached for the handle. It was there, solid. Cold. I turned it. Nothing. I pulled harder. The wood around the frame began to shift slightly. The crying rose another level. The mirror behind her showed the child now pounding against the glass silently. The woman finally spoke again. Every 9 years. Her voice remained calm. The walls creaked louder. The candles flickered violently. Someone must return. I turned back toward her. And that's when gravity stopped making sense. It didn't just shift. It flipped. The room lurched sideways, and my stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. The candles stretched into thin, horizontal streaks of flame, wax dripping across the air as if the world had tilted 90 degrees. I slammed into what had been the wall. Except it wasn't a wall anymore. Up wasn't up. Down wasn't down. The entire cabin groaned. Every wooden plank began cracking at once. Not breaking, settling. Like ancient timber suddenly compressing under impossible weight. The floorboards popped beneath my boots. The walls bowed inward with sharp, splintering snaps. The ceiling beams twisted and shrieked like something alive. I forced myself to look at her. The old woman was no longer standing on the floor. She was upside down, hanging from the ceiling. Her bare feet were pressed flat against the wooden boards above. Toes curled into the grain as if gripping it. Her dress hung downward toward me. Her gray hair spilled freely, swaying slightly in the shifting air. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't falling. She was perfectly still, smiling at me. The mirror behind her had rotated too. Or maybe I had. I couldn't tell anymore. But the child inside it was now pounding violently against the glass. Its mouth was wide open in a scream I still couldn't hear. The crying in the room rose higher. Not from the mirror, from inside the wood. From the walls themselves. Every 9 years, she said calmly, still suspended above me. The door handle was still in my hand. Solid. Cold. I yanked it again. Nothing. The frame around it began to warp. The wood stretched slightly, like it was softening. Someone must return. A beam cracked with a sound like a gunshot. Dust rained down. The entire cabin shifted again, and I fell hard onto my side as gravity snapped violently back into place. Everything was upright again, except her. She was still on the ceiling. Her head rotated slowly, unnaturally, until her eyes locked onto mine. "You stayed too long," she whispered. The mirror rippled, not shattered, rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. The child's hands pressed outward, almost through. I screamed and threw my full weight against the door. The wood around the latch splintered. The crying reached a deafening pitch. The floor beneath me buckled as if something underneath was pushing up. I pulled again, and something gave. A loud tearing crack split the frame. The latch snapped free, the door flew open. Freezing wind slammed into me. Rain hit my face like needles. A storm raged outside, violent, roaring, nothing like the calm forest I had walked through earlier. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran. Mud sucked at my boots. Rain blinded me. Lightning flashed, turning the trees into white skeletal shapes for half a second at a time. Behind me, I heard the cabin groan. One final, splintering collapse. But I didn't turn around. I just ran toward where I remembered parking my truck. My foot hit something slick. I slipped. My body pitched forward. I tried to catch myself. My head struck something hard. And everything went black. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. Gray light filtered through the trees. I heard my name before I could move. "Andrew," my father's voice. Close, panicked. I felt cold metal against my arm. My truck. I was lying beside it. Not deep in the woods, not near any cabin, right where I had parked. My father knelt beside me, grabbing my shoulders. "What happened? We've been looking for you all night." My head pounded. The forest looked normal. Still. Quiet. No storm damage. No broken trees. No collapsed structure. No cabin. "I was heading back to the truck," I heard myself say. My voice sounded distant. "The storm got bad. I slipped. Must have hit my head." He studied me. "There wasn't any storm," he said quietly. I didn't answer. The neighbors stood a few feet away, uneasy but silent. There was nothing else to explain. No footprints in deep mud, no debris. Just me and my truck. They helped me up. I didn't mention the house or the mirror or the old woman hanging from the ceiling. I went home. And I tried not to think about it. But every 9 years, on the exact same date, I dream about the cabin. In the dream, I'm already inside. The candles are lit. The air smells like old wood and damp earth. The door is behind me. I reach for the handle. It's there. Solid. Cold. I turn it. Nothing. I pull harder. It doesn't move. The walls begin to creak. The wood starts settling with those same sharp, splintering cracks. And slowly, I realize she's already there. Not hanging, not moving. Just standing in the center of the room, watching me, smiling. The mirror behind her no longer shows a child trying to escape. It shows me, inside the glass, pounding silently. And in the dream, no matter how hard I pull, I can't open the door. I can't leave. And each time I wake up, I know something's getting closer. The 9th year isn't just a dream. It's a countdown. And one day, I won't wake up beside my truck. I'll wake up inside that house, and the door won't open at all.